So let's get started. And I can't tell you how excited I am to have Mac McKeown here with us to talk about life and to talk about struggles in life and how to overcome those. And Mac, you and I went to high school together, and there's been some time since we went to high school. However, you've always been someone that I've looked at as, in high school and after, you've taken a path that was your own. And, I look back, or I looked at, trying to put together some notes to at least introduce the conversation. And, I went to Facebook, and it captured me when it said, your title or your who I am: husband, father, author. I like that a lot. And then, I think when we were in high school and we were coming up with our yearbook slogans or whatever we had under our name, I think an awful lot of people, maybe it was AC/DC or The Starway to Heaven, or whatever song or poem, maybe it was some great philosopher that we tried to use to capture who we were or what we wanted to say to people. And this is yours. The key to life is happiness and friendship, because if you don't have that, you don't have anything.
True to the day, yes.
True to the day.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure. So you wrote a book.
I did. I'd always wanted to write a book. Soon after graduating high school, I had a desire to write, but I didn't know what to write about. And I think just reading Stephen King's works kind of inspired the thought of it. I was seeing a girl in Brunswick for a little while, and her mother said, children's books, you should really probably look at children's books. Well, I was intimidated by Dr. Seuss and all the other great, Charlie Brown and all the others. It's like, I don't know. And I just couldn't find my calling. And I always had that desire, and come to find out, rolling ahead 40 years, there's over 90% of the general population have always wanted to write a book. But there's a small percentage of 1 or 2% that actually carry it out.
Let me just intro the book a little bit, if I could.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the book, the title is Taste of Hope. Hope Has Many Flavors.
Mm-hmm.
And while many of us have, this is a description that I pulled from the book, while many of us have faced one or two of the hardest moments in life, few can fathom the relentless challenges that pushed Mac to question his own sanity, his faith, and the universal conundrum of, why me? It's an extraordinary 44-year journey through trials and tribulations that have significantly influenced his family. Mac delves into the depths of his soul, unfolding his experiences as he grapples with life. Within the pages of this book, he shares lifelong wisdom on how you, too, can make a positive difference in navigating a traumatic event and embrace a positive outlook. Never give up or quit. Humanity can be cruel, so be the other person. There are no guarantees in life, so do your best. And I'd love to have you delve into the book and any nuggets you could pass along, because the goal, here and in life, I think for us humans as we are here,
Right.
is to encourage others so they can be the best self the best that they could possibly be. And how can we help pass that along to those that need some encouragement?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Being somebody that's read the book, you understood our generation was based on, okay, we're gonna get out there in the world, we're gonna do what we can as soon as we can. My goal in life was to find a job that can sustain me. I had applied to Maine Maritime Academy, and there was a gap in in my SAT scores that were supposed to go to the college but didn't. So I wound up at the shipyard, and I thought, well, I can either find my way here and maybe get an apprenticeship with an associate's degree from Maine Maritime, or just reapply and start a year later perhaps. But then it became more of a quest to start a life with a family. And to me it made sense, start young, and that way I would be able to experience grandchildren at an earlier age, because my parents were older. So it was I saw how it had affected my upbringing, and I thought, well, I want to do this in a different light. So I did meet this wonderful woman, and she was living in Lewiston. It was really an amazing connection. We hit it off. I met her on Valentine's Day in 1986. Didn't take long. I knew this is it. And on April 18th, I proposed. I was like 6 weeks into it. I knew. And from that, because of our connection and our likes, we wanted to start a family. And when we had our first son, man, we were both just on cloud nine. We were living our best life, really. You being a dad, you can think back of when your firstborn was 2 years old, and think of what would you do if there was just constant illness all of a sudden with your 2-year-old. And now you've got this unexplained bruising that's appearing on his arms and legs. Where's this coming from? And you love and trust your spouse, but at the same time, we can't explain these. And so she's looking at me thinking, are you doing this? And I'm thinking, are you doing this? We went through about a month and a half of 10, 15 doctor's appointments with a pediatrician, only to be sent home. He's got a virus. He'll work out of it. Oh, he's got bronchitis. He'll purge it. We'll give him some amoxicillin or something. And after some time went by, clearly he wasn't getting better, and he was tired all of the time. Halloween came, and honestly, I had to pull him in a wagon because he was too tired to walk. And we had him dressed up as a pumpkin. Two-year-old little boy dressed up as a pumpkin. He was adorable, but it's one of those moments, Rick, when somebody looks at you and says, why is he a pumpkin? He's so pale, he should be a ghost.
Yeah, and most 2-year-olds, you can't hold down.
No, exactly.
You can't stop them.
So we stopped the trick-or-treating right then and there. That was it for us. It's like, she's right. She told us something that we could see, but other people are seeing it and commenting on it. So we took him to a different pediatrician, and he said, I'm going to send you to some blood specialists down in Portland. So I was working in Portland at the time on a ship in dry dock in Portland, and I came home from work that day, and she says, I don't know what to tell you. I am so scared. I called this number that the doctor gave me, and they answered and said, Maine Children's Cancer Program. So I figured I had the wrong number, and I hung up. And I called the doctor's office, and she said, no, that's the right number. They're blood specialists. Now, granted, we're 25, 26 years old, and novices in parenthood, young as we were, right? And only to have an immediate doctor's appointment for him, and the whole bone marrow sampling was the most primitive, prehistoric kind of terrible procedure that I would never ever want to experience without completely being anesthetized.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, reading through that description, it was just grueling, and I cannot imagine. And I'm sure you must be saying to yourself, couldn't it be me rather than him?
It was an outer body experience. I simply could see myself almost, but yet it felt like a dream. There was this, none of this made sense when he came back and said, "Your son has leukemia." I was so dumbfounded, in shock. We were in shock for the first couple of weeks, actually, just walking around like zombies. And really, some people can flip a switch in their mind and just flow through. I do have increased behavioral modifications where, because of the stresses that we've been through, I do go into self-preservation mode and become a very stone-cold, calculated thinker. Okay? But that's taken years of practice. Back when we were in our 20s, I was a zombie. Terrible. And we went through 2 years of hospital stays and blood infections where he would be hospitalized, and trying to get his leukemia under control and in remission. And there were 12 kids diagnosed within the year, our first year of induction. So you have a lot of parents from all walks of life in Maine coming in, and you're forming this unwanted bond with parents and looking at their children for all the different cancer types of problems that are taking place. It's not just leukemia. Some have brain tumors and cancers of the jaw or something, and it's horrific to watch these little innocent human beings go through this. What's even more horrific is the amount of funerals that we have attended for these children who would succumb. Our son Kevin, out of those 12 kids, Kevin is one of 3 survivors. The rest succumb to their illnesses over time. And what was really scary for us is that his last chemotherapy, which I administered at home because he had a central line, they called the house probably a half an hour, 45 minutes after we gave him that dose. We were all celebrating. No more chemo. We are done. We're in the observation phase now. We don't have to do much. And lo and behold, the phone rang, and our very favorite oncologist says, "It's not over. We're not done." And I said, "Dr. Allegretta, that's a cruel joke. I mean, I'm hurt."
We just celebrated. Yeah.
We just celebrated, and your timing is terrible. What is going on? He said, "We stopped cranial radiation for fear that it was harming their brain more than it was helping the kids. But statistically, we have an allowable, nothing we can do about rate of failure, and that's at 2%. 2% of all the cases, that's as low as we can get it. But unfortunately, with all the hospitals throughout New England we are at an alarming rate of 13% of kids that are failing. They're falling out of remission. And it's based on just boys. It's not happening to girls. It's hiding in their brain and it's hiding in their testicles. Here we go again. Outer body experience. I don't know, what are we facing now? And so we start asking these questions, and he says, well, look, we're facing a bone marrow transplant. And I knew from 2 years of experience that that's a 50-50 shot of living. It's a hit or miss, and let alone finding a bone marrow donor that will match. And on top of that, my wife Marguerite is 7 months pregnant. And you're telling us we have to go through this? Oh, how far of the rabbit hole are we going to go down here, you know? So we regrouped. We went to a meeting in December, and what they ended up doing was said, and understand that they confer with Boston, and they also confer with Paris. There's a hospital in Paris that does a lot of European cancer treatments. So it was a huge collaborative effort on the medical oncologist portion. So we were blessed to know that it wasn't just a couple of doctors sitting across from one another making a decision. There was a group, an entity of people. Now, another month of induction. So Kevin's first month, when he was 2, he spent an entire month in the hospital with bottles of chemo being issued, and just constant, pushing all of those leukemic cells into suppression and killing them off to the point that they cannot find a leukemia cell when they do a bone marrow sample. There's none to be detected. They know that there's probably some somewhere, but right now that's the definition of remission. So their goal was to do another month of induction and then follow that up with 6 weeks of cranial radiation every day. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Cranial radiation every day for 6 weeks. What is that going to do to him? Come on. And they said, we've narrowed it down. He won't be able to do your taxes. It affects his math base. He'll be able to do math, but he's not going to gravitate to mathematics when he gets older. He won't be strong in it, and for whatever reason, that's the part of the brain that gets affected through this. All right, I can live with that. There's all kinds of other careers out there besides math, right? So, and I said, you mentioned back in November that it could hide in the testicles. So are we radiating him there too? Is he going to be sterile? They said, we've chosen not to do that. Oh, and by the way, we're going to also do spinal taps. He's going to have spinal taps as well to break that membrane, put the chemo in the spine so that it goes up around the brain. And it's not just because it could be in the spinal fluid that encompasses the brain. So if it's hiding there, we're going to attack it there. We are confident that if it's in the blood system, in the testicles, then we'll be able to capture that as well. So we did a 3rd year of this, followed with years of observation to see if it would come back. So he was diagnosed in 1990. And in 1998, it was in August, we had an appointment. So we went to this appointment, and he says, congratulations, you beat it. His chances of getting leukemia are as good as yours or mine. And he says, you did a great job.
8 years.
I said, We didn't do anything. You guys are the ones that had the protocol. You set the standards. He goes, no, no. Nutrition, rest, family orientation, having a standard of everything, whether it's, you set standards for him that there's good behavior and bad behavior, regardless. I mean, I had a confrontation with my father because he felt so terrible for him, but he misbehaved at their house. And he says, and I said, Kevin, you need to go sit in the chair for 3 minutes, because he was 3 at the time. And he says, you will not discipline him in this house. Okay, no problem. Margaret, get your coat. We're going. And he said, what? I said, this is my rodeo, We're setting the course for him, and he has to know that he's special, but not because of his medical. He's special because we love him and that we want everything good for him. And that comes with progressive discipline as well, so that he can understand that there's an envelope or a box that he can't just break through and do whatever he wants in the world for behavior. And that's where the doctor was telling us that structure, they firmly believe, because they've seen so many families that falter, that waver, that do different things, that somehow, in his firm belief, there's nothing documented, but his firm belief, it's the environment of love and consistency that really helps. And if you don't think that that's true, look back on the studies of Nazi Germany, when they would take infants and deny them human touch, and they would die within months because they never had the touch of connection with a person to hold them, and they felt so lonely they would die. I was dumbfounded by that reading.
Yeah, truth in the fact that there can be, you can die from loneliness and lack of love. So, in an 8-year experience with Kevin, leukemia, you've got yourselves struggling, learning, you've got other people around you. What were some of the things that you learned and took away from other people in your lives, and what you learned about yourselves and dealing with other people?
I think people are afraid typically of the unknown. There are a lot of things that they're very empathetic for, but their fear is they don't know what to say, they don't know what to do. And sometimes out of that fear, they will do something that is just simply socially perverse. They'll alienate you because they don't understand and they're afraid. And perhaps it's a mother's instinct that she doesn't want her children to be exposed to something. But I think that is just, at the time we were in the 20th century, at the very end of it, approaching the 21st, we have to have some understanding and some compassion to reach out to people. But you know what? I'm sure if we all reflected on an incident in our lives where we could have been more compassionate, but turned the other way, that in some way we're all guilty of it to some degree. However, that was a point of the book, and the reason for the title of the book was really, you have a newborn and you've got a taste of hope. But that taste of hope had a different flavor once he was diagnosed. Now my hope is shifted, and I have a different taste in my mouth for hope, and it's not the same. how do I, as a husband and as a father, bring that to the forefront and cascade that through happiness in everybody's life so that we're all successful. Because life goes on, and nobody is going to help you pick yourself up. You've got to figure out what to do on your own, basically. There were people who were giving us advice, and some of the advice was really bizarre. We had one person who said, just leave him in the hospital. Then let the nurses take care of him. No. If I was 2 years old, I would be petrified if my parents abandoned me in a hospital. So, good meaning, good intentions for advice like that, because to them that made sense. You need to self-preserve you and your family, so just let them be. No, it's not that way. It wasn't for me, it wasn't for her. So we pulled ourselves up and we struggled. We made it through. We went through counselors, a whole different barrage of counselors. And I'll tell you, whatever it is that somebody's going to go through, if you don't have good success with a counselor, don't give up. Go find another one, because they're like a girlfriend or a boyfriend. If you don't have that connection and you don't feel like you're being nurtured and fed so that you can heal mentally, then you need to look elsewhere. Just because they're a counselor or social worker or psychiatrist, whatever, you've got to have that deep connection so that you feel rejuvenated. And there's a lot of difficult, trying times during moments of doubt. It's like, I didn't sign up for this. What am I supposed to do? And there have been faith-based challenges, sitting in church amongst 500 people maybe, crying right there in the pew, and at the end of church people just get up and walk away. And I thought I would have gained some kind of hand over the shoulder, you're having a rough time, dude. I can see it. Let's go to lunch. Let's go over here and talk. What's happening? Why are you so upset? Nothing. It was like there was a whole different. They were afraid. I had to reevaluate. Why aren't they helping me in any way of comfort, of aid, of anything? What did I do? Yeah, you do a self-assessment sometimes about, well, what am I doing wrong? Is it me? We blamed ourselves for his cancer. And Dr. Allegretta told us, he says, you have environmental, you have viral, you've got a lot of different things that could be the cause of this. And sometimes it takes all three of those to turn the key within his body so that it happens. The right environment was there, and then he had a virus, and then his DNA, and whammo, he's got it. You guys didn't do anything, It's not what you fed him. It's not the exposures. It's not stuff that you did before you had him. Don't worry about it. But any good, caring person will stop and think, what have I done? Now, if anybody's going through a difficult time, that's 9 out of 10 times, if you've come to that question where you're self-assessing to see if you've done something, then take a good, deep, hardcore look, okay? However, the important thing about that is change the course of your actions if you have involvement, Don't keep repeating it, and don't beat yourself up over it. We're only human one time, and we're growing each and every day into our senior years. We're still experiencing new things, new emotions. So that's my big recommendation to a lot of people is that's a crazy world, and there are so many people who have been through so much worse than us. Terrible, terrible atrocities. And they survive because they reached deep within, and they didn't write a book, and they were successful, and they have overcome adversity. I wrote this book with the intent of people, once my wife was diagnosed with her recent diagnosis, that's when I said, all right, I feel like Job in the Bible, it's just lifelong, somebody's picking on me kind of thing. And sometimes I wonder if I've been assigned demons that's just going to keep challenging me. I don't know how to explain any of it. There is a rabbi who explored the possibilities, and his name is Rabbi Cushman, and I actually quote him in the book because he nailed it. And his book is When Bad Things Happen to Good People. And his conclusion was beautiful. And when you're challenged, just blow on those embers of hope until it starts glowing, and nurture it so that you have the fire of caring and being able to move forward. And I thought that was inspirational, extremely.
Because in our short conversation so far, you've talked about Kevin, and you just mentioned your wife's diagnosis, and there were previous diagnoses with her. You have your son Brian, who had challenges. Right. So I don't want to rush the story because that's not my intent, but there's a lot to unpack here about the 44 years of challenges that you've been through that have brought you to this point.
That August, we were given that clean bill of health, and then September she takes Sean, our youngest, for an eye appointment. And this eye appointment is his first one. He's getting ready for school, and he'll be in first grade, or kindergarten actually. So let's do all the things, make sure that he can see the board if he has an eye problem that we haven't recognized. And panicked. I don't know why. The little guy, he was just afraid to sit in front of that thing and have that big monstrous thing in front of his eye. So she says, well, look, I'll do it and I'll show you. And she says, I'll read that board. And when she did, she read it, and he says, okay, I'm going to cover the other eye. And she says, turn the light on. He said, it is on. So they moved the screen away, and he started looking in her eye and doing all kinds of checks, and then they put the cardboard over it, and she couldn't see out of one eye. So I had just gotten home from work, and I get a call at the house, pre-cell phone era, and it was my neighbor, because she had called our next door neighbor asking for support to come get Sean. She was panicking in the doctor's office, and I rushed over as soon as I got home, and he says it's one of three things. She's had a stroke, she's got a brain tumor, or she's got some kind of degenerative vision that she could be blind within 4 to 6 months.
Yikes. Another.
This is just a month after we got a clean bill of health. So, I felt like a boxer who just tried to overcome a knockout. and I'm getting back up on my feet, and I'm pummeled. I get a left hook that I didn't see coming, and now I'm down. So I'm trying to focus, and he says, look, this is all we've got. I'll get you an MRI set up. So I get her out in the lobby, and she starts breaking down, so she goes back into the observation room or the treatment room where she can, or at least the bathroom where she can panic in privacy. And he comes back and he says, or the nurse comes back and says, we can get you an appointment for an MRI in 2 weeks. And I said, no, that's unacceptable. We can't do that. And she goes, I'm sorry, that's all we have. Well, I guess we're going to have to play hardball. I said, call the police. And then she starts looking around the lobby in the waiting room. She goes, why? What's going on? I says, you're going to need them to get me out of this building, because I'm not leaving until she has an MRI tonight. Plain and simple. And the doctor comes out, and he's all huff and gruff. What do you think you're doing? What's the meaning of this? I said, you know what she's been through. A mother of a child who had leukemia for 3 years, and we waited, and now she's served this on her plate, and you want her to wait 2 weeks. Shame on you. This woman deserves better treatment than that. So you're going to find her an MRI, and I don't care if it's in Boston. I will drive her, and she will know what she's facing before her head hits the pillow. Other than that, you better call the police, because I'm not leaving. I mean, the line was drawn, and that's where it was. So he left. He comes back in about 15, 20 minutes, and he says, you go over to Central Maine Medical Center. There's a building across the street. You be there at 9 p.m. You can get an MRI then. I called in a favor, and they're opening up the building. There'll be a tech there to do it. We'll call with the results to the doctor. I'll wake him up, and he'll read your MRI results. By 10:15, she knew she had a brain tumor. And it was located right behind the center of both eyes. So there's a nerve that connects your eyes together. It's called an optic chiasm. And they figured it was in behind that. So we went through a couple of different surgeons, and we went to Boston for a second opinion, and they said, oh, it's self-encased, it doesn't have tentacles or anything, and this will be easy. You can do this in Portland, Maine. You don't have to come down here. So we had it done, and it was growing out of the optic chiasm. So he couldn't take it all out. All he could do was work on removing it from around that bank of nerves, and then she had to have cranial radiation for 6 weeks every day. She had an aneurysm in post-op, and violently ill in post-op. She was vomiting, and I got her into her room finally. They let her go back into her room for observation, and the next morning I went to her room, and she was gone. And I said, where is she? And they said, well, the doctor was waiting for you. He had to take her into surgery because there's something wrong. So she had a back-to-back brain surgery. I met him before he went in, and he said, listen, we've already cut the skull. I just have to undo the screws. We can go back in, and I just got to find out what's going on, because she's got a bleed going on in there, and I don't know why. So It'll only take a couple of hours, really. Okay. Well, a couple of hours turned into about 12 to 14 hours.
In surgery, 12 to 14 hours?
Yes, sir. Yeah. I was alone. I had somebody watching our boys. I had 3 boys. And I'm thinking, everything. I'm going to have to raise 3 kids on my own. She's not going to come out of this. What is... So when she did, you know, I hung around. I went back because I roamed everywhere, trying to make sense of my life. And when I ended up seeing her in post-op again, she says, I can't see. And the doctor came over and he goes, you just had brain surgery. You're going to be okay. Give it some time. Well, long story short, she ended up being peripherally blind in both eyes. You take the center point of your eye and then go to the outside where you've got peripheral vision. It's all gone. All she can see is center. And she worried. They banned her from driving for 6 months until she acclimated to it. And it affected her depth perception. So negotiating stairs, she fell down a flight of stairs once because of she misjudged distance. So she missed the top step and she somersaulted twice down a set of wooden stairs at our house that went to the garage. But God love her, she never had pity for herself. She always would pick herself up, brush herself off, and kept going. Proudly, out of all of the times that she drove in Maine, and when we came down here to Florida, she never once was involved in a car accident that she caused with poor peripheral vision. She overcompensated and her head was on a swivel. So the cranial radiation killed her pituitary gland, and that caused a lot of problems, lifelong problems. So she's on a regimen of a steroid drug for the rest of her life, which has side effects. But she's, you know, I said in the book, and I said it, one of the surgeries, I can't remember right at this moment if it was the first or the second, but I was going out to the car in the parking lot at Maine Medical Center, and I was so distraught and so overcome with what I'm facing that as I'm walking across this open parking lot, not between cars, but I'm right in the driving path, I looked up to the heavens and I yelled out, I just want to grow old with her. And I stopped and I realized I just said that out loud. I didn't mean to. It just came out. I was so internalizing my emotion. And then I looked around and there's so many people in the parking lot staring at me.
Yeah, the raw emotion of it all.
Yeah. So he granted me that request. You know, I've been able to get 24 good years additional from that night. And sometimes you got to be careful what you ask for, because I wasn't specific of how I wanted those following years to come. So Brian, a few years later, comes down with what we thought was a flu. Okay? Met a friend of his. We took him to the circus. The whole family. And Brian brought his friend. His friend was sick, very sick. And I thought, wow, what am I doing? I should turn around. I should bring this boy back home and say, I'm sorry, you know, you shouldn't be out. But I took him. And Brian ended up catching what he had. But then Brian started acting really bizarre.
How old was Brian at that time?
Brian's like 11. And I'm thinking, is he too old for the circus? I know Kevin was not happy to go. It's like, really? It's kind of lame, you know. The older brother kind of don't want to go to see the circus thing. But they were in town in Portland. We wanted to do a family-oriented event. So then Brian, on a Sunday, just starts lashing out. Now, both he and his younger brother Sean were altar boys at church, and they just really good, well-behaved kids, you know, and constantly getting compliments on their behaviors and how good they are, and we were just lucky and blessed, and they all get along together. There was never fighting. They were each other's best friends, and to this day still are. So he comes off with some really bizarre thing, and he starts ranting, and he tells his mother he hates her. And I said, something's going on. I said, you need to go to your room, go lay down, take a nap. I don't know what's happening, but don't come out of your room. Well, I offered him supper. He didn't want to eat. And I said, well, if you do get hungry, there's a plate for you in the fridge. We'll take care of it, but just rest. So the next morning I get up, and I said, I'm very early to get up to go to work at the shipyard because of the travel. We're living in Lewiston. And here I am at 4:30 getting ready to leave in the morning, and he comes tumbling out. Hey, Dad. Hey, what's going on? How are you feeling? He goes, I feel so much better, and I just want to say I'm sorry for how I acted yesterday. He says, I don't know what happened. I said, well, thank you for saying that, and please tell your mom that you're sorry as well, because she's worried. She didn't get much sleep. So he had a great morning, great start, and the school called her, because she was working at a school in Auburn, and the school called her and said, hey, something's wrong with Brian. He's not responding to people when asked questions, and he loves music, but he didn't go to his music class. So Margaret, she knew something's truly wrong there. This kid just gravitates to music. So lo and behold, we got him home. Well, when I got home from work, she says, you need to go see him. I said, why? You've got concern in your voice. What's the matter? He thinks I'm trying to poison him. What? So I go in and I say, hey, Brian, how are you? The room is dark. He's got all the blinds pulled, the curtains. He's blocking the window from light. I said, what's going on? Mom's trying to kill me.
Yikes. That gives me chills.
I said, Brian, this is not the time to play around and do any kind of acting. You came home from school sick. What's wrong? She's poisoning me. What makes you say that? Now, we had Tupperware cups, right? The big, tall Tupperwares, multiple colors. His was orange. She brought him water, and he was so upset because the water was orange. I said, Brian, the water's not orange. Water is transparent. You know that. It's orange. I said, okay, I'm going to go talk to your mom. I said, are you hungry? Yes. What do you want to eat? One strawberry string bean. All right.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So we took him to Central Maine Med. He had a spinal tap in the emergency room. Doctor comes back. He goes, "You're in very dark, murky waters right now." Okay. Suppose you tell me what's going on. He's got some form of encephalitis. And his brain is swollen. And we've got to take care of it as soon as possible. Okay, so what does that mean? Where are we going? Are we going upstairs? Are you admitting him? He goes, no. He's not going to make the trip to Boston. We're going to take him to Portland, but we can't life flight him because I think the helicopter ride would be too dangerous. What? So they pack him up in an ambulance, and I looked at the ambulance driver and I said, "Hey, are you going to be, doing Mach 1 going down to Portland?" He goes, "No, it's now 1:30 in the morning." He said, "It'll be just I'm doing a speed limit and we're going to be fine. You can follow." I said, "Okay." So he went through Auburn and picked up the turnpike in Auburn. And Rick, I lost him at one street light and I never saw that ambulance again. And we drove. I put my hazards on and I was doing 105 miles on the turnpike. And I never caught up to him.
Did something change, do you think, or?
I think Brian started talking
to
them like he did with me, and it freaked them out, and they said, "We got to get him there now." So he spent 3 weeks in Maine Med. They pulled a doctor out of retirement to diagnose him because they couldn't find out what strain of encephalitis it was. And the doctor said, "The best I can tell you is that flu bug, the virus, left his bloodstream. It left his bloodstream while it was in his brain, and it caused an infection and his brain swelled up. Your frontal lobe is where your personality is, and that's what's swelling, and that's what's changing his personality with you." Okay. So, he had 3 weeks of that, and then he had 6 months of physical rehab because when your brain swells, your neurons actually get pinched microscopically, and you have to challenge them to reconnect or they will die off. So he was doing physical rehab for that period of time. And, Kevin, Brian, Sean, they're all Eagle Scouts. I was myself was an Eagle Scout in high school, and I got a lot out of scouting, and I wanted them to have that experience and that honor. So they all exceeded the expectations there, and they did very well in scouting. Plus their extracurricular activities, marching band. Kevin was involved in art. We tried baseball, t-ball, little league, basketball, you name it. We wanted to expose the boys to find something that they wanted to feel nurtured in, and something, a good connection. And lo and behold, they're doing great. They're all happy, healthy adults. And Sean graduating from USM with a bachelor's in music May of 2014. Now, Margaret and I went to Hawaii in 2008. We went to Maui, and I said, "I love it here. We got to move here." And she says, "You're on a vacation high. We're not moving to Maui." And I said, "Yeah, but this is like perfect." And she says, "No, listen, we're not doing it." She says, "You'll come down and let's just go home. And we did, but I couldn't get out of my head. She had two brothers that moved to Florida, and on Sean's graduation, they spoke to her and said, you got to get down here. You know, it's much better than Maine. Maine's not offering you very much, and there's a lot of opportunities down here, so why don't you consider coming down? So we did, and we looked at all the boys and said, look, you guys don't have roots. Before you start putting roots into something, let's all move down together. Yes. So we moved all three of them down, and Sean was a little late. He didn't want to go in September because we sold our house and moved in September of 2014. He arrived in April of 2015, but it wasn't long. He was here for a few months, and he got a job offer. People were begging him to apply for this job, and he goes, yeah, but I'm in Florida. I said, Sean, you just apply and see what happens. So he applied for the music director for Freeport High School, and he got it hands down. They called him 45 minutes after his computer interview and said, when can you start? Can you be here for next Monday? That was on a Wednesday. So, yeah, he moved back. He was the first one. He moved back. Kevin moved back 5 years ago, and he lives in Lewiston. So does Sean. They couldn't leave their hometown, I guess. They just felt that was their niche. That's where they belonged. They kept apologizing. I said, listen, this is your life. You get to live it. You don't live it for me. You're living it for you. So your job is to live your best life. Do what your heart called you to do. And Brian, he stayed. He's north of us just a little bit, and he's got a great career working in assisting the medical field. He sets up laser equipment for surgeons so that they can do laser surgery, whether it's on a knee or a kidney, so he travels all over setting this equipment up and assisting the surgeon with everything. Kevin's got his master's in psychology. No math base there, so he picked it, right? And he loves it. He's working with kids and families. So they're super happy, and we're proud of them all.
Any more health impact with Kevin? His remission continues?
Yeah.
Anything with Brian? Does he have any lingering effects?
No.
No.
Wow. None. And Margaret, she got a job in the school system like she had up in Maine, and she was doing very well. And then a new administrator came in, and she was talking about how this school administrator was changing the tactics of children's behavior. And she's like me. We're both old school. It's like, if you're going to have a sound education, you've got to have some peace and quiet in the classroom, and there's a certain decorum that takes place for good education. But this administrator saw it differently, and would allow kids to just misbehave in class and get up and run around or what have you. And she thought that was more nurturing, perhaps. So it was a Monday, and Margaret and I are done for the evening. Supper's done, and we're watching, I think, Vanna White. And I look over at her, and I'm thinking, you're awful quiet. What's going on? Do you want to watch something else? And when I looked at her and I asked her that question, she looks at me and she starts slurring, and her right side of her face is drooping. I said, Margaret? Oh, no. I got up and I calmly went to my cell phone, called 911. I says, my wife's having a stroke. So the paramedics showed up. We we head out once all the information is given, and I knew where they were taking her, the local hospital, and I start making phone calls while I'm en route. So I called the boys first, and they said, okay, keep me posted. And then I called her brother. And this is one of the things, Rick, that there are cumulative things that take place in a person's life and how they're treated. And sometimes I've come to realize that you just can't continue exposing yourself to that kind of behavior. Because when I said, your sister's in an ambulance, she just had a stroke and she's heading to Trinity Hospital. And his first response was, well, I'm just sitting down to dinner right now. Oh, okay. Well, by all means, you enjoy your meal. So there's a lot of lessons to be learned, and I think it's important. My first couple of pages of the book, I quoted a guy who won an Oscar, and he said, surround yourself with people whose faces light up when you enter the room. And I don't feel like there are people that we have been associated with, family and friends, that have always done that. And I'm at the stage of my life and wondering, why am I going to subject myself and her to that kind of turmoil that we harbor in our hearts when I can just say, thank you, we choose not to see you anymore. Difficult decision, a lot of soul searching, but I got to tell you, it's very freeing. I feel much more relief. There may be judgment cast upon me for doing that from other people, but at this point in my life, I need self-preservation. I need to be able to take care of myself because I'm all she has. And really what I mean by that, and I'm going to conclude her diagnosis with, Kevin telling me, Dad, he says, you're in denial and you're subjecting yourself to just immersing yourself at work and traveling to Europe. You've really got to take a look at Mom because she's growing signs of dementia. Kevin, come on, where are you getting this from? And he hands me a pamphlet. And I was angry. I didn't lash out at him. I was just, okay, thank you. And he drove his separate way because we met at a movie theater, and he drove home his separate way, and I drove home alone. And I started paying closer attention, and then I looked at her one day and I said, listen, I'm starting to have concerns about your behaviors and how you're acting. And she got really upset with me, verbally attacked me. I said, okay, sorry, I'm concerned, that's all. But then she stopped talking. There was no open dialogue of communication coming from her. She would only respond, but there was no cognitive thinking for her to come at me with conversations of interest from her. And then she was working at a Catholic church doing after-school care because I asked her to quit her job after her stroke. It was a TIA stroke. It was minimal, and she fully recovered. But the school on March 1st of 2018 fired her. Said, we're moving in a different direction. Your employment is no longer required. And they handed her that letter and made her leave. And I said, oh, something is weird about this. So I started bringing her to doctors. I brought her to a neurologist who said she had vascular dementia. And he could fix it if we went to his, what is it, I want to say hyperbonic, but it's the
Hyperbolic chamber?
hyperbolic chambers, yes, with infused oxygen. 20 sessions, $5,000. And he says, I'm going to tell you, you can request your insurance, but they're not going to cover it. I said, well, we're doing it because I'll do anything for her. So I paid out of pocket, and it was our 17th visit, and they were 5 days a week. I would go and take her. And then it changed. It started that way, and then it went to 3 days a week, and it was carried out that way for a period of time. Her 17th visit, and it was a Monday, and she gets out of the chamber, and she looks at the tech, and she goes, thank you, have a nice weekend. And I said, what'd you just say? I told him to have a nice weekend. Sweetheart, it's Monday. Oh, yeah. So I knew it wasn't vascular. Well, a little time had went by, and then lo and behold, the pandemic hits. And now I'm trying to find another neurologist. I found one in Tampa, and she did some cognitive test, and she says she needs to see, she needs a CAT scan, and she also needs to see a neuropsychiatrist who can give her a test. It's a 5-hour test, and that will give us a better understanding, because she's either looking at frontal temporal dementia or Lewy body syndrome. Well, I looked up Lewy body, and I thought, please God, not this. That is a horrific disease. But frontal temporal dementia was really not much better. So I'm facing two demons of brain diseases. The neuropsychiatrist did not want to see her, refused. I said, can you tell me why you're refusing to see Margaret? Well, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and I don't want people in my office. Well, this is a business of yours, so if you're self-sufficient and independently wealthy, congratulations. But we're talking about you being a medical professional and you're refusing care. I'm not subjecting myself to this pandemic. I hung up, I called her back, and I said, I'm going to give you options, because I think life is about options. So what are you saying? She said. I said, you can see my attorney. You can see the local affiliate news, who I will contact right after this phone call, if that so be your choice. And you can explain to them why, I think this would be a great human interest story of why you're refusing medical treatment for somebody who's obviously having a problem. Or you can just set her up with an appointment, and we can get this done. And the receptionist says, I'm going to call you back. And it was probably 10 or 15 minutes, Rick, and the phone rang, and she says, are you free this Friday? I said, yes, absolutely. I'd love to come down with her and have her tested. We go down there, and there isn't a soul in that building. I go into the waiting room. We're the only two people in there. I bring Margaret in, and I couldn't even wait in the waiting room. She says, you're going to have to leave the building. Okay. Here's my phone number. You call me. So they did the test for 2.5 hours. They gave her a lunch break. brought her back. She did another 2 hours, and they called me again and said, she's done. You can come get her. So I went to pick her up, and the doctor said, I will give you the results in the morning. So next morning, phone rang. She said, open your email. And the email and the diagnosis was there as frontal temporal dementia. And she says, I don't believe she has the behavioral variant, because that is where people's behavior are just off the charts. They do crazy, bizarre things. She has the PPA version, where she's going to lose her speech. She won't be able to read or write. And eventually she won't be able to understand the English language. Okay. She says, you're all right with that? I said, well, at least I know what I'm facing now. Because before, the sky was the limit. Now I know how to take care of her, and I can focus on my care. So since then, October of 2020, I've had her at home, and I'm taking care of her. She can no longer walk. She rarely speaks. She'll answer questions. She'll speak to a stranger before she speaks to me, because I think she's trying to hide it in her way. But she'll peter out after maybe 5 minutes, and she won't respond. She'll start looking the other way. She sleeps more than a cat, 17 to 19 hours a day, but it's broken up. And my goal right now is to keep her happy and safe. Ironically, she has the exact same thing that Bruce Willis has. If you've seen the tabloids or understood some of the things that are on television about Bruce Willis, when they said that he has aphasia, I said, no, because he's one of my favorite actors, so I knew it. I was following this when I heard that he couldn't remember lines. They would put an earbud in his ear so they could recite them to him. And when he started having problems with handling the firearms in the movies, that's not aphasia. Aphasia is just losing your ability to talk. I said, if they get actual testing, they're going to find out. I believe he has FTD. And about 9 months later, they came out with that diagnosis. And it's the same as hers, that she's just 4 or 5 years ahead of him. So there's the really strange side effect with FTD is that's another disease that people are so afraid of being in front of it that they alienate people. Now, I'm on a couple of different groups of families, spouses whose spouse has FTD, and 4 years ago when I first joined the group, they said, first thing you need to do is get used to the fact that you're going to be abandoned by most everybody. I said, what are you talking about? You will be ignored, and people will not talk to you. They'll stop coming over. You'll have family that will abandon you because they're afraid. They don't want to see it happen to her, and they're afraid. So it's easier for them not to see you. And they were right, 100% right. So I struggle with that from time to time, but I also understand it. She's a beloved woman, and nobody wants to see her in the state that she's in. And they drive home crying. And that tears them up, so they prefer not to come over.
Wow.
But I will not put her in a home because I don't think that she deserves that. I do everything I can to ensure her safety She's never had COVID. I've had it once. I had a caregiver at the house who had it, stayed 10 hours at the house, sick with COVID until I got home, and then she told me she was sick with COVID. Margaret has never had it, never been sick. So I'm doing something right.
Well, I just, in my mind, I'm searching for how does this man find the strength and determination to keep going. And I just, in reading the book, oh, my heart split in two hearing those words. I think that was when you got the diagnosis. I felt a lump in my throat surface, and I told her with confidence, I vowed on the altar during our marriage that I would honor you and cherish you for richer and for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do us part. Now what do you know is that our marriage comes with an extended, now what you don't know is that our marriage comes with an extended warranty, so we are locked in forever. And from the depths of within you, you have done this, and the lessons you've learned and that you can teach others about hope. There are parts of hope in this book that you keep coming back to keep you going, and the many different flavors that it has. And when I think about heroes in the world, Mac, you're a big time hero.
I don't feel it. It hurts, but I thank you for that compliment.
I mean, that's what I took from that's what I took from this book, was an immense ability to overcome so many things. And to put that in perspective, we hear it so many times. When you're in trouble or you're in a hard spot, somebody's in a worse spot than you are.
Right. Yeah, we hear that. And there's a lot of people.
I don't know how that could be in your realm of possibility, but
Oh, there's plenty of people out there, Rick. They're just quiet people who have had great experiences of overcoming it as well, but they just haven't put it into words. My goal was to do that. I wanted people to recognize things. I wanted people to self-reflect and realize if they're treating somebody inappropriately, please reconsider, do the right thing, and don't just, in today's society of social media, don't just put out a heart and say prayers and hugs to you. I'm thinking of you. I'm praying for you. Go over there and hold their hand. Cook them a meal. Do something nice for them. Stay off social media. Don't just welcome them with prayers and hugs. And that goes through me like, oh, it hurts so much because it's so empty. As a recipient, it's empty. I don't feel inspired by that. And I don't know many people who have been in terrible circumstances that really feel like, oh, did you see? I got 3 hugs and a heart on my social media page. I feel so much better today. I know that's really, super sarcastic, but when it really comes down to it, my reference of Nazi Germany and isolating infants, you shouldn't be isolating people in society when they're in need. We are a different civilization, I would hope, in the 21st century of mankind. And yet, there's a lot of people out there that look around at society and the entire globe and think, are we heading towards the end of days? What is happening in this world? And this is just my little contribution to say, look, folks, let's do this together. let's be the band of people without race, without gender identification, without anything. Let's just help one another. There's not a crime in that at all. And quite often I've looked at the boys and said, I wonder how impressed God is at this point of where we are in this 21st century and where we're heading. Is he impressed, or is he just thinking they just don't get it? You know? And sometimes we see it on a microscopic scale, and sometimes it's on a global scale. But Michael Jackson said, you know, it begins with the man in the mirror, right? It was a nice song, but truer words have never been spoken. So this is my little attempt to put out to people, put your indifferences aside and just reach out and be there for somebody in need. Make a difference.
Yeah, make a difference. Love everybody always. Yeah.
Right.
We could come from there, from that point. We
Agreed.
might pause a minute before we spoke, and we might pause a minute before we act. In a world that's on warp speed, that's going to take some major work, and I appreciate you taking the time to write a book. I have a lot of respect for you for writing the book. It's a huge accomplishment, and you know that you carried a dream that you had in high school and made it happen in life.
Thank you.
That's really outstanding.
Thanks, Rick.
Yeah. Well, Mac, I can't thank you enough for the time, and what an incredible story. I really would encourage people to go out, read the book. I know you can find it on Amazon. Great memoir, just super encouraging and insightful. So thanks for taking the time, Mac.
Thank you, Rick. It was great seeing you as well.
So if people want to, they can go to Amazon to get the book.
Yes.
If they did want to reach out to you and talk to you, you mentioned a couple of groups that you're in. What's a way, Mac, for people to connect?
I think probably the safest means is my email address. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to reevaluate what I have about myself on Amazon so that there's some more easier connections where they can reach out to me.
People are looking for a friend. They could find some encouragement from you. Maybe not as friendship, but maybe just encouragement. You know, people are going through similar things.
Absolutely, yeah. I've tried to reach out to different groups, such as the American Cancer Society, the American Social Workers Network Association, and just to see if this is something that they would have of interest, where, you know, I'm not somebody who just took a class and wrote a book and said, you should do this. These are the things that I ended up having to do out of experiences. And look, everybody's challenged. There's a section in the book there, Rick, that we didn't talk about, and that's my wife and I both had, on the northbound side of the main turnpike, we had a tree picked out that we thought of driving into when we were alone driving home from Maine Medical Center. And I didn't know that she felt that way until the day where we were driving home, and she says, you see that tree right there? I panicked because, yeah, I'm very familiar with that tree. I said, yeah, what about it? And she says, I've thought so many times of just leaving the turnpike and driving into that tree. And I let out a very low, suppressed scream in the car. And she asked, she says, what is the matter? I said, we both had the same tree. We both picked the same tree, and we survived it. We never left the road. There's a lot of people out there that have a tree picked out. and they got to realize that there's a tomorrow, there's another day coming.
One day at a time.
Yep. And if they need some help with that, they need an ear to listen. I'd love to be available to help.
If we weren't 1,500 miles apart, give me a big hug.
Well, when you come down to see your folks, maybe we can do something. I don't know.
Yeah.
You're welcome anytime.
Thank you, Mac, very much. Yeah. Well, we'll sign off for now.
All right. Be safe, be well.
Yeah, thanks.